So my waters broke last night, and it gushed out like 3 times. It's rainy outside, and if you hear Mocha, my dog, she's dreaming deep. I feel good. I feel calm. I'm feeling a cramp right now.
Welcome to the Mother Freedom Show. I am your host, Emily Siebenrung. Now, if you're subscribed to my channel or if you've seen me, I have other women, my sisters, share their birth stories on the show. And today, I just thought it would be cool to share my reflection and my life partner. I have my husband here, Cody Storey, to share his reflection on my free birth story, on our free birth journey together.
Why not just mix it up and get some other perspectives on the experience that we had, right?
I think it would just be so cool to hear your reflections on it, because I was totally in the zone, but we'll get all into that.
Yeah.
And we have a baby boy.
Bjorn.
He's 7 months old now. And
it's
let's
going by quick.
Yeah. Let's just rewind, and we'll take you back to when we decided to start building a family. We definitely had a conscious conception.
We made a decision is basically what that means.
Yeah.
Right. We decided, hey, the way our relationship is, the way our lives are going, the adjustments we've made and the adjustments we want to make, it's in alignment with what we want to do next. So when we say conscious, it's not like a woo-woo pie in the sky, way out there in the cosmos type of thing. It's essentially just a decision. And it's no better, no worse than any other way of going about it. It's just that's the process that we took. We communicated about it, and we came together, and we were in agreement of making that kind of a decision, because we didn't take that decision lightly.
Yeah, and for me, it's important to feel stable, to be stable, and
definitely
to be in a different environment. So we were
where
both.
Were we?
So we were both living in LA, and Cody was there for how long? 15 years.
Yeah, grew up in Colorado, moved to the city, put my 15 years of time in.
Yeah. And I was born.
Jungle.
Yep. I was born and raised in North Hollywood. I did some time leaving LA and while I was in the Air Force. But yeah, we just knew we wanted to get out, buy a house, and live in nature. It was so important to me I'm such an avid hiker, and I love just having to not deal with traffic and just get to my destination, not be in the car for an hour, just to explore and be in nature and away from people. So that was really important. So
well, what about that was important, right? It was the accessibility, because you were living in a city, I was living in a city, you were always traveling outside of the city to be in the wilderness, right? I was always traveling, and this is even pre-meeting each other, I was doing the same thing. So there was a lot of commonalities there. However, we also had some aspects of that we didn't really enjoy, which was the traffic piece, because we're traveling out of the city in traffic, go get, some nice time in the wilderness and decompress and, connect. But then it's like after that experience, we got to go back through traffic just to get home. And it's almost like the feelings, the, things that took place kind of little bit by little bit got stripped away, and then it's like, oh, we're back to the city, we're back to the grind. So we already had that. Then it was like, well, what kind of future do we want, especially if we're going to bring a child or children into the world?
What's the most conducive environment to raise a child? And North Hollywood definitely was not conducive. And
let's say a lot changed at that period of time, because the whole pandemic, the whole COVID crisis, that really made a big shift, especially in the state of California, especially in the bigger cities, San Francisco, Los Angeles.
And we love living freely.
Absolutely. And it was not in alignment with freedom.
Nope.
Whatsoever. And the things that were happening in that city were just, it was brutal. That's not the environment that we saw ourselves staying in, nor raising children. It's just point blank, call it as it is.
Yeah. So Idaho, the land of the free.
So the first decision was we wanted to have children, right? Then the second decision was based on environment. And you and I went on a journey, right? We went to Utah and we went to Idaho. Thankfully, you found Idaho. That came up on your radar and we investigated. And that was about a 1.5-year project, maybe even 2-year project, just to figure out where we wanted to live.
So we bought a house in Idaho, and that year we moved, which was last year, I knew I wanted to conceive by the end of the year. And so I found that nourishment was so important before pregnancy, so preconception and during pregnancy, that I really honed in on my nutrition. And we already eat very clean, carnivore-ish diet, really focusing on meats. And I loaded up for 100 days before conceiving, you know, a lot of good fats, animal fats, egg yolk, steak. I mean, that's just kind of our regular way of eating. But I really focused on also not having any processed seed oils. And you could say I followed a Weston A. Price diet. And so September of 2021 rolls around and we consciously have a kid, make a baby. Cody thinks it was the first try.
I know the actual moment. I know the actual occasion.
And at this moment, so before we moved, I actually took out my copper IUD, which I know now can cause zinc deficiency.
Can cause all kinds of problems.
Yes. Even though copper
controls.
IUD is non-hormonal, we actually watched the business birth control, but that's a whole nother topic. So I took out my copper IUD and I took it out way prior to moving because I just wanted to detox whatever was happening in me. And I just wanted my body to be ready. And I find out that I'm pregnant. I really enjoyed my pregnancy. I would say the first trimester, I did experience nausea, but not to the point of vomiting. I was always constantly, you know, producing saliva and swallowing it, right? I always ate little hard candies just to suck on. But I really was craving butter, sourdough bread. I had liver pate. I was making sardine melts. I was drinking a lot of raw milk smoothies. So the conventional nutrition advice for pregnant women, I did the complete opposite. So I had my raw milk. I had sushi when we were in Salt Lake City. I had kombucha, and it's perfectly fine. Now, I'm not a medical professional. This is just my personal experience and what I've also read in Weston A. Price resources and Lily Nichols' Real Food for Pregnancy. And so that was like my Bible, her book. And I was always just constantly reading it, things that could really nourish me and my baby, and what to stay away from as well. So I really paid attention to, I mean, it was even meeting Cody, he never used aluminum foil. So we really stopped using aluminum foil. I mean, we never did, but anytime we went out to eat and something was wrapped in foil, like I would immediately take it off. I would be very aware of the BPA on store receipts. So I wouldn't touch it. I would just say, you can throw that away. I invested in Extrema pans. So I stayed away from Teflon, the nonstick pans. We drank spring water.
That's all we drink anyway.
And I just really cared about
filters on all of our showers.
Yep.
There's filters on our sink, making sure we're getting chlorine out of our water as much as we possibly can.
So, and I tossed all of the toxic skincare stuff, lotion. And I even had aversions anyways. I bought this really natural essential oil in Montana, and it was like vanilla scented, but my first trimester, it was just, I couldn't handle it, and I still can't use it, which is really funny. But yeah, I stayed away from even like natural deodorant. I really got into using Tubes & Co. tallow balm for my face because the skin is permeable. Before, I didn't use completely eco-friendly natural cleaning products. in LA, but I really made sure that moving here, we would just start clean, start natural, start non-toxic with everything. So I really paid attention to that as well. Toilet cleaners and all that stuff. So that was my pregnancy. I really had a great time. I enjoyed it. I am a remote personal trainer, and so I was strength training until my second trimester, just light training and doing a lot of walks. But I
camp chefing.
Yes, and I went into the woods to be a camp chef, and I rode a horse for 5 miles, which was really fun. But I want to say that I went to go play tennis. I think second trimester, which was like the worst idea because it's fast movement. My ligaments, I'm loosey goosey, and so there isn't a lot of stability in my joints. And Cody made me run back and forth, and I totally, strained something. And so I would say for about a month, it was really painful to go hiking uphill and all this stuff. But I just rested. I did.
That's important to note, though.
Yeah.
Right? That's a lesson. It's like if your hormones and I guess the chemicals in your body are making changes for what's to come, the pregnancy, if the ligaments and tendons and those tissues around your joints are a little, like you said, more loosey-goosey, the lesson there is what? It's like, yeah, you can train, you can, get out and do things and be active. However, maybe going bananas on a tennis court or a basketball court might not be the best idea.
Yeah.
Because it's maybe just too intense. You don't have to take it to that level, but it doesn't mean sitting on the couch is the answer either.
Me being into fitness and as a trainer, I mean, I want to get into this a little bit, but yoga did not resonate with me. And I don't know what it is with yoga, because as a pregnant woman, you are loosey-goosey. There's a lot of relaxin. And so stretching seems counterintuitive. Is that the right word?
Yeah, you're already more pliable than usual.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend, functional range conditioning, mobility, controlled motion, which really helped me just keep blood flowing. And so right when second trimester hit, all of the nausea, everything just like went away, and I was able to resume eating what I was always eating. So eggs, steak, ground beef, meat. We really paid attention to Wi-Fi and EMF. I wore Defender Shield's belly band and never had the laptop on my belly or my cell phone or our cell phones near my belly when I was pregnant. So we were really mindful of that as well. I was even working like 10 hours at the organic health food store in town, and they wanted us to wear a mask. And Cody told me to quit immediately because we were not deprive our baby of oxygen or me of oxygen. I mean, it was even hard just to wear one. Felt like I couldn't even breathe in general. So we are really mindful of that as well. So even before moving, I always knew I didn't want to give birth in a hospital. I am just one to not like to go with the mainstream or to conform. I mean, most people are having births in a hospital. Most people are doing the gender reveal and having a little ultrasound picture. Like it just didn't resonate with me. And I knew I wanted to have a home birth, but I also knew I wasn't going to have a home birth, in my mom's house. And so I listened to a few podcast episodes. Your brother has the Lifestylist podcast, Luke Story, and the seed got planted when he interviewed Yolanda Norris Clark from one of the founders of Freebirth Society. And I was just amazed that you can give birth without a medical professional. And so that seed got planted. And I also heard a podcast on ultrasounds. And aside from all that, prenatal care with a medical provider in a hospital sounds inconvenient. I don't see any benefit for myself. I never felt the need to have validation from an external source, from medical technology, to say that my baby is healthy, that I'm good to go. And I don't want to give any power to someone else to say that I possibly have gestational diabetes or to diagnose me with something.
And well, the reality was we are healthy people. We live a very healthy lifestyle. We live in a very healthy environment. Those were all conscious decisions. That's just who we are. It's how we lived. And for sure, neither of us, whether you or me, saw ourselves entering into the hospital environment because it is artificial and very foreign. And why do that when we already have the perfect environment set up here on planet Earth? And when we're healthy, there's nothing alarming saying we need outside medical attention. And birth is completely natural. We've been having babies since we've been evolving.
Yeah.
Like that's the reality. And why go check yourself in somewhere when there's nothing going on? There's nothing wrong. There's no indications from either the psychological mind or the physical body. We had zero signs as there was anything wrong. So why go and put ourselves in that environment, put ourselves in that position where who knows, like you said, what could come of it in terms of like a diagnosis? Because why? Everything was going perfect.
And there is no...
And we're not against the medical system, but there was nothing going on leading us to believe that there was any reason as to why we should need some sort of medical attention. Like the pregnancy, the process of birth is 100,000,000% natural.
Yeah. And for me, no diagnosis would have me change the idea of wanting to have a home birth. It wouldn't be worth the stress of me knowing something was wrong with my baby. It's not worth the stress. And
don't you want to know the baby's gender, or don't you want to know if your baby maybe doesn't have ears or an arm? Or, it's like, what is that going to reinforce? Now, if we needed medical attention, something was wrong. Like I said, we would go get checked out. But like everything was going as planned. And why do that to yourselves or to ourselves? Like, what is it going to cause? Oh, well, we're just going to obsess on whatever we found that was so-called wrong. And even if our baby had something like that going on, it's okay. That's love and acceptance that comes in at that level. If there is something that presents itself as to like some sort of, I guess, handicap. Like, it's okay.
And aside from that, I mean, I'm completely healthy, like we talked about. And so...
And we were not going to cause problems either by getting, say, an ultrasound. I don't want to put our child in a position where that's now
there's a risk,
a potential of the baby maybe coming out in a way that, you know, isn't the easiest for that child to, you know, walk through life with. Why do something that could potentially harm our baby?
And I know that ultrasounds can harm and damage mammalian tissue and cells. So
probably a million reasons. Right. And do your research. Like, we've done our research. I don't know all the statistics and all the facts and schematics. However, when we've read into it, listened up on it, we were informed and we were able to make informed decisions because of the research versus just saying, oh no, I'm against that or I'm for this. It's like, well, let's look into it and let's see so we can come to the right conclusion for us. And that's what we did. We didn't have any doctor visits. We didn't do any, you know, Doppler, radar, whatever.
We didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. And not relying on the obstetric system and medical technology gave me and my baby a way to connect together. And I've heard a lot of women say that they needed some kind of validation from something to see their baby on a screen, to feel that they have a baby in there, to have a human being in there and to feel some kind of connection. But for me, it was just within myself. So that free birth seed got planted in me, and we moved to Idaho, and I was asking about midwives. And I was thinking about, even though that seed got planted, why I was still looking for a midwife. And after interviewing, you know, my sisters on that, and a lot of them had the free birth seed planted as well, and they were exposed to it, I was thinking, well, why are we still seeking a midwife? And I think, I can't say for others, but for me, I think just naturally as a woman, we are seeking another wise woman, another woman to reassure us to hold space for us. And I think that's just a natural thing for me to want to seek. And so I was asking around, and there were no midwives in the town we live in. They're about 2 hours away. And I think I contacted one 3 hours away, and she's even said, you know, I don't serve your area. You're a little too far. And I was like, okay. And so that was the last talk I had with the midwife. And I had 2 other phone numbers. But after I bought the complete guide to free birth, I went through a section where it said having an undisturbed physiological birth, you know, in a dim environment, will really maximize the outcome of having a perfect birth.
Mhm.
And so after realizing that even a doula or a midwife, even someone there that a non-medical person, if they were in my environment, they could impact my hormonal blueprint, the process of me giving birth, how my oxytocin and how my hormones go through my body to give birth.
Mhm.
Having someone there that didn't give off the right energy, or even the right energy, but it can still stall contractions. And after learning that, I was like, yeah, I really don't want anyone there except
Mhm.
my husband, someone I'm really close with.
And that was a new level of decision,
Yeah.
right? Because as you said, we were still thinking, well, maybe we'll have a midwife or somebody, you know, attending our birth. Because me as a husband, me as a man, like, you know, these aren't necessarily things I considered, other than I knew in my heart of hearts and in my gut, there's no way we're going to have a hospital
Yeah.
birth. But I
Whistles,
still had
yeah.
that idea of like, well, maybe we should have like whoever those people are. And, you know, I don't know all these terms, but I was learning them. We should have maybe a midwife, or we should have a doula, not even knowing what the heck they do.
Mhm.
But when that seed got planted in you, like our conversation was already around, yeah, we're having a home birth.
Yeah.
The next evolution was you digging in and learning out more, and finding out what a free birth was about. And it's like, well, wait a minute. We don't even need a midwife. We don't even need a doula. Okay, that's a new concept, but it was in alignment with evolution. Like, was there always a midwife and always a doula every time, every woman on the face of the earth and all across history? Was there always a midwife and a doula there when a woman had birth? Absolutely not. And even up to this day, there are still women out there giving birth outside of the hospital without a doula, without a midwife, and it's completely fine. It goes as should. It's successful. And they could be like even on their way to the hospital and have a birth without a doctor,
Mhm.
without a midwife, without a doula, and it goes fine. So like the evidence is in, the
Yeah.
proof is in.
So what were your thoughts when I shared the idea with you?
Well, then it comes back to like me reflecting on myself, because it's like, okay, like that's not a small decision, especially in the world we live in now, where, you know, we watch movies, we hear people's stories, and those always include what? A hospital, a doctor, and nurses, or midwives and doulas. So it was a very foreign concept for me to kind of fast forward and put myself in that place of just us being in a home by ourselves, going through this birth process with you.
But after I explained it to you, right? On
Yeah.
why?
Well, it was like, holy cow, because that's a big responsibility, and I hadn't really contemplated that. But in my gut, I knew that was right. I just was like, holy cow, like that's a big decision and that's a lot of responsibility. So in order for me to feel good about that and feel stable, because stability is important, as you said, then if that's the case, we need to do some research.
Mhm.
We need to become informed. But you were already in that process.
Yeah.
So I was confident in what you were learning based on what you were sharing with me. I was confident in who you were learning from. I believe around that time you bought one of Yolanda's courses. What was it called?
The complete guide to free birth that I
The
mentioned.
complete
Yeah.
guide to free birth.
I already had gotten a few other books even before getting the complete guide to free birth, which I definitely recommend. Just continuing to read birth stories and family birth stories, free birth stories, unassisted birth stories. Unassisted Birth by Laura Shanley is a great book. Even a book called Sacred Healing, I think by Suni Carl, and Gentle Birth, Gentle Mothering by Dr. Sarah Buckley. There are so many great resources out there on just, for me, informing myself
Mhm.
and Cody learning about the what ifs and the complications. And
Because you can do this without doing research and not being
Yeah.
informed, and that's fine, and you can. However, we had the ability where we could tap into information
Which-
that could potentially help us, right?
yeah, which made me feel more prepared.
Absolutely.
And it's always been a thing for me to prepare. I mean, I've done a lot of hard physical challenges, and preparing for it mentally and physically and spiritually is important.
And if you can, why not?
Yeah.
So I was, because you asked me like what that was like for me,
Mm-hmm.
and that was big. That was a huge concept. So the cool thing was, because of the research you were doing, like I was kind of on the sidelines, and I'm catching wind of what you're learning, whether you're sharing it or I'm walking by and I watch you, watching, so say a curriculum.
Or listening to the Freebirth Society
Well, that's
podcast.
what I wanted to connect it to. It's like listening to the videos with you was huge. That was like, because like underneath everything, I know my role. My role is just to be the rock. If you need me, you need me. If you don't, you don't. And I'm cool. I'm just here. Right. But for me to be the rock, if we have that information, I could be more solid. And as I listened to the videos you were listening to, and the story medicine from the podcast of other women sharing so many different stories, right? Because in my mind, I'm like, well, wow, yeah, like it's pretty straightforward, like what birth is, like the kind of outcome. But I'm like, there's so many factors that could be in play in terms of like directions it could go. Like, what are all the possibilities and what are all the directions? Those videos and that podcast were showing me all the different experiences that could come up, and that's what allowed me to feel more grounded, because I'm like, oh, it happened like this for this person, it happened like that for that person, and it was successful. Or this came up and things didn't go as planned, and I had to get to that place of acceptance of whether it goes as planned or maybe there's a little deviation from the course at hand, and that's fine too. And what do you do about it, and what direction do you go at that point? And so that was for me, as a husband and as a man who will never have a birth ever in my life, but you will. That was the thing that really allowed me to say, yep, 100%, this is what we are going to do. But I want to kind of touch on what you said about people being in our space.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing I took very seriously, which is our home is our kingdom, it is our temple, and it is a sacred space. And under no conditions is it okay for people to come into our kingdom with bad juju, with bad energy, or bringing any sort of fear into our world.
Yeah, and that is what happened. And when I got pregnant, I mean, it's my first pregnancy, and I was so excited to share it with friends and family, and I was also excited to share how I was gonna give birth to my baby. And we shared it with my mom and your parents,
other family
and
members,
other family members,
other friends.
and zero was received well. I mean, your Luke was down and open to it. But yeah, from our parents, it was all, they're conditioned, and they're conditioned that babies are born in hospitals. They're conditioned that birth is a medical event, that giving birth is dangerous, that you can die from giving birth. And by the way, you can die by getting into your car and driving
down the road to get some
going however miles per hour. But we don't think about that before getting into the car. And that is a great metaphor that I learned from
there's no guarantees
Yolanda.
on anything.
Yeah.
Other than there is a guarantee we're not going to be getting out of this life in the physical form.
Yeah.
We will transition on in another way. That's a guarantee.
Yeah.
But there's no guarantee with birth.
No. In life there isn't. So there's a kind of acceptance as well. But aside from that, so we didn't receive any, it was all resistance. And
we got some positive support, but the majority was definitely like negative.
Definitely. And so a lot of it was like, what if you hemorrhage, or did you even go get checked? You should go get checked to see if the baby's okay, or get a blood test.
Go do an ultrasound. Go get somebody to put their fingers up inside of you and give you an examination.
Yeah.
What about your hips? Are your hips even gonna be able to allow a baby to pass through?
Because your mom had scheduled C-sections.
Yep. I was a C-section. My other brother was a C-section.
And I mean, my mom gave birth in the hospital with all three of us. I have two other siblings, but she had all epidurals. And so, yeah, it was a lot of that. And it just made me feel, it didn't feel good. Because I wanted, of course, like really, like you decide to do that. Like, I'm so excited for you, but everything was just
Is there
negative.
anything we can do to
Yeah,
help you?
yeah.
That was the thing that was missing, was the support factor.
Yeah. So it was all fear mongering, horror stories, based off what they experienced and what they've heard.
It was just pure fear. It was fear. And what we were bringing to the table as far as the decision we made and what we want to do was straight up radical. And I can understand, rightly so. Like, it was radical to me too. And that's fine. However, because it was so radical, I didn't just stop there and shut it out.
Mhm.
But that's kind of what we were feeling, was
Yeah.
the resistance. It was being shut out versus considered.
Yeah.
And that became inconsiderate.
Yeah.
And that caused tension, and that brought fear into our world. And so we would go on walks, because we're avid walkers, avid hikers. We love being outside, and that would be our time together, even though, we work and do what we do in the day. And we would have those kinds of discussions where it's like, oh, hey, I just got done talking to so-and-so family member. This is what came up.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on this? How did that make you feel? And
Every
what we were
little
looking at
thing.
was like, it was not a freaking party.
Every conversation we would have. And then after getting off the phone, it was kind of like, oh, I should have said this to debunk this and their concern. And it was constant of trying to convince and trying to persuade.
It was unnecessary.
But it's barking up the wrong tree. And it's up to them what they want to learn about birth. It's up to them.
It's not our job.
It's not our job
to take care of their thoughts and their feelings. That's their job.
That's
and
their business.
And our business was our business, which was why we leaned into what we leaned into.
Yeah.
And you found the support, even if it didn't maybe come directly through certain family members, and God bless, still love everybody. What was cool is you did find the support, you did find the love, you did find the acceptance, you did find others who had walked that path before you, which was, I guess, as you call, wise women.
Yeah. So I signed up for the Radical Birth Keeper School by Freebirth Society, and when I wanted to purchase it, I was just like, I don't care about like being a radical birth keeper. I mean, that's a plus, but I just need connection with other women who see birth the same way I see birth, the way I value giving birth, the way how I believe birth should be. And and I just found the support there. So I really sought out what I needed for myself, for my spiritual mansion. And so towards the end of my birth, at this point, it was just a lot of disconnection with all of our family members, not wanting to talk to them because we felt that things would be brought up. And then,
well, we kept trying.
Yeah.
Like, we were in a position, we didn't want to convince anybody of anything, but like, we tried to convey certain touch points, talking points, whatever you want to call it, but it wasn't very well received. And that kept happening. And it was like, why do we keep repeating this? And it was interesting, just naturally, we weren't like, F everybody. Right. We were just like, this isn't fitting, and we're not going to allow this in our home. We're not going to allow this in our ears through the phone. And that was very clear to us. And then just naturally, as the pregnancy, was progressing, and we were getting closer to the date of birth, like, everything kind of just started getting more and more distance. All those phone calls and texts and everything became less and less. And what we found was it was you and I and the powers that be, God and your support. But
it wasn't just like, that's it. I mean, there was a point where you were yelling in the phone.
Oh, I had to confront a lot of issues with certain people that I love dearly and that loved me dearly. Is just, there was no way we were going to see eye to eye, and that was clear. But I'm the rock. I have to stand my ground in terms of what I believe to be right for me and for us and our family. So we had to take a stand, just like you took a stand with your sister. Was it fun? No. Was it comfortable? Absolutely not. But it was the right thing to do, so we could protect ourselves throughout this process to have the greatest potential, to have the most beautiful outcome ever.
Like during my pregnancy, I lost the relationship I had with my sister because she had said we lived our lives very differently, and she didn't want to be a part of it. And that was really hard to hear during being pregnant.
It was brutal.
And
I saw it. I was on the outside looking in, and I could tell that was not an easy situation.
And our third one is here. And also, you even when your mom and uncle came to visit, and you know, I wasn't
Mhm.
there, you really respected, you were protecting me, and you even said like, do not bring.
There's no conversations about what we're doing. There's no conversations about birth or anything of that nature allowed in the home. And that's just the law.
Mm-hmm.
There's no ifs, ands, maybes, or buts about it. That's just not allowed in the home.
You really held your ground to protect
Well, I'm the
me.
gatekeeper,
Yeah.
and that's my role.
And I really appreciated that, and that.
I think that's every man's role.
Mm-hmm.
And because of it, what did we have? Well, we had no fear mongering allowed in the house. We had no
Bad
negativity,
energy,
bad juju allowed in the house.
Yeah.
Even though we had moments where it was happening, we were able to see like, we can't allow this to keep happening. So that's where the distance came, you know, and it was rough because it's like, you want that love, you want that support, and you want everybody to be a part of, in terms of especially the family.
Yeah.
You know, but we did have also Luke, my brother, who was a family member, and he was very understanding, very accepting, and very supportive.
Someone like him, one person helped.
Yeah, but we also had Dr. Bob, I believe, as well. We
Yeah.
had a conversation or two with our therapist, our counselor,
What a
who had been
deal.
helping with us for years already.
Yeah.
But this was like a new, you know, circumstance, and these were new situations we were coming up against, that there was a little like, well, how do we navigate through this?
Yeah.
Because like, we don't want people to disappear. We want people to be in our lives.
Yeah. And
but
what we learned from what our therapist said was like, that we're different, that
we live outside of the envelope.
We live outside the box, and with being different, it's going to come with
these kinds of challenges.
Yeah, and you just accept it, and that really helped. Like, okay, we'll just embrace it then and go woohoo.
Well, it came back to acceptance. Right? They don't have to accept us, but we can accept them, and we can also accept what is unacceptable. Yeah. So we accepted that this is unacceptable. What are the decisions and actions we need to take? And that's the course of action that we're going to take. Okay, it was really simple at that point.
So we can get into the birth. You ready to hear your birth story?
Bubba.
So
sweet boy. Yeah.
So I knew my birth season, Bjorn's birth season, was going to be spring or summer. I didn't want to give energy to a due date. I wanted to let all expectations fly out the door. Yep. I kind of kept it vague. But he did arrive.
Yeah, but we also,
than we thought.
That's another good point. That's a great thing to bring up, right? We didn't want to know a specific due date because it was, based on what we were learning, very unnecessary.
Yeah.
And it could just be one more thing to cause a problem, thinking, oh, it has to happen on this day.
Yeah. Or
right?
One time, yeah.
And if it doesn't happen on that day, something must be wrong.
Yeah. So it's Thursday in April, and I wake up to make pancakes really early in the morning, and I end up falling back asleep and not even attending one of my RBK, Radical Birth Keeper School's class. And I just feel so out of it, like not even wanting to even talk during one of my breakout sessions that I have with my mentor during the school that day. And so I go to sleep that night, and I get up to go pee, and my waters are open, or there something goes down my leg, and I'm like, oh, I think my water broke. And so it was just like, you know, dripping down my leg. It wasn't like one huge gush. And did I end up telling you that my water broke that night? Okay. And what did you say? You're just like, chill.
It's like, it's all good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Go to sleep. And
well, I just figured that was a good sign.
Yeah. And I was just like, what is this? Like, what does this mean? Like, I was like looking it up in the Complete Guide to Freebirth. Like, there's a like light pink tinge to my water. Like, is birth coming? Though I know your waters can be open for weeks as well. So I didn't want to give it too much energy. And I get like one mild cramp, and then it goes away. And so the next morning rolls around. So I was in my RBK class. We were looking at case studies of different different free births.
Yeah.
and constantly water is just dripping, down my leg in tissue. And I'm telling my classmates what's happening, and they're just like all like, "Oh, you look so calm though." But it's like, yeah, because I wasn't feeling any kind of sensations. And so nighttime falls, and we had pulled pork, I'm making coleslaw, but it's like the sensations are intense enough where I have to like go onto the counter and ride through the wave. And I was playing some Krishna Das, and at this point I wasn't sure what was happening and if I was going to be the type of person to want music or not, but I was playing some music and I was on the toilet peeing, and like it just got so intense where I did have to like stop mid pee to turn off the music. And weeks before, I mean, even during my pregnancy, we were talking about how we're going to prepare. I had told Cody what I wanted to get done that night. So stock up the fridge with all of these foods, and I'm gonna, make sure during the birth I have water and electrolytes, and I need you to go deep clean upstairs, put the mats down, because I knew I wanted to give birth upstairs in our to give birth upstairs in our bedroom. And I was actually contemplating a water birth, but it just sounded really complicated, and how we would, put a filter on. We didn't want just city water in the birth pool.
Ball was too complicated.
And keeping the water warm, heating it up. It just sounded very complicated. So
I just had a minimalist.
yeah. And I'm a land person anyway, so I think I was gonna make do. I have dry skin. So Cody cleans up everything. He puts the mats down. We go to bed, but I can't even sleep this Friday night. Like the sensations are that intense that I go off the bed and I'm like sitting, leaning against the bed and down on the mats, and I'm just up all night, and I'm like trying to roll on the stability ball, and you're asleep, right? What was going on in your mind during that time?
I was just like, okay,
As like
probably it. I mean,
like
what
as
I'm seeing,
like when you went to the grocery store and all that, like what were you thinking about? Anything?
I just felt like it was time, but I'd also let go of like a specific day. Like I'm not thinking like, oh, this needs to happen, or oh, this is gonna happen right now. I'm just like, this is part of the process, and this looks like an indication that we're well on our way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to know all the details and know exactly what's happening. I just was like, we're gonna continue to. This isn't like a conscious decision. It's just leaning into trust.
Yeah, and that weekend actually, we were gonna go to our Airbnb that we rescheduled into like this A-frame thing, and and I was like, I don't think we should go. I don't think I want to give birth in someone else's Airbnb. I want to be home. And this is a whole 2 weeks prior to suggested due date. I'm just like awake all night on the floor, trying to sleep on an incline, not even moving. And then the sun comes up and I'm like, oh yes, another day has come. So this is Saturday now. My waters are still dripping. Oh, even Friday night, that day, I was even okay enough to have like a nutrition consultation with the client as like my sensations were happening. So it wasn't that intense where I couldn't really work. During that night, Friday night, I'm in bed and I suddenly get up. And at that time, we already had the baby Bjorn potty because I bought 2 things before he was born. And I said, I have to throw up. And you went to go get the baby Bjorn potty. And
this was after you ate massive. Didn't we eat like a massive meal or something?
Yeah, we had pulled pork and
coleslaw.
Yeah, I was hungry. I was ravenous. Yeah. And I woke up at, I think it was like 2 a.m. and I was like, I need a puke. And like, I throw up, you're holding it for me.
Yeah.
The baby Bjorn potty in bed, and I throw up.
So it was the puke potty.
Yeah. Throw up 3 times.
All of
it out. Yeah. What were you thinking?
I was like, well, just another indication that we're probably moving in the right direction.
And so, yeah. So then I go to sleep. I
just figured the body's cleaning out whatever it needs to clean out of your stomach because of what's about to happen.
So after I purge, I try to go back to sleep, but I'm like on the floor at a recline, trying to sit on the stability ball. I'm like, that doesn't work. And I'm just like going through my sensations. So the sun comes up. It's Saturday morning. I'm like, yes, another day has gone by. And at this point, we're like, this process could be for weeks. We did not have expectations that this was going to be a fast labor from all the stories we've heard. Yeah. And I didn't want to have expectations like, it should be this way. birth is coming soon. It was just like, let's just keep riding it. It's, it's like a marathon. So after I eat apples, I think I decided to go downstairs and sit on the couch or lay back on the couch, and I puke more. I purged 3 more times. Do you remember that? You don't remember that? Okay. I purge, and I actually decide after that to go take a hot shower just to kind of change the environment and hoping that these sensations would go away. And so I'm in the shower and I'm like, it feels really good, but I'm like having to hold on to the door to ride through a sensation, and the sensations don't go away. And so I go back downstairs and I'm like completely naked, and I have like my blue and white blanket, and I'm hot and cold, right, Cody?
Lots of hot and cold. I think I videotaped you down on the couch as well once you went back.
Yeah,
out.
not a pretty sight, because I was just like gritting my teeth. I wanted complete silence.
Yeah.
I didn't even want him to turn on the water. I was really sensitive, you could say.
Yeah.
To the sound. Something about that, like it distracting me from tuning in and coping with my sensations and the intensity of it. And so, I'm getting a message from Yolanda, my mentor, and she messages me and she's like, how are you doing? And like I voice message her saying that I'm in pain and that I can't talk right now. And she's like, everything sounds normal, you're doing great. And just getting that virtual reassurance was a beautiful thing.
We had one thing that popped up that was kind of like, what's that?
Yeah,
and that's
so
when the fluid had like blood.
I want to go to even that Friday. I think it was my mucus plug. I actually took a picture of it, and I think my mucus plug came out. And so I had that on tissue and I took a picture of it. So my mucus plug came out as well the day before on Friday. And so this is Saturday, back to Saturday. So I tell Cody that I feel like I need to poop. And you tell me to go to sleep, right? What did you say?
Well, I knew from what I'd studied and what I'd listened to, conserving your energy was really important throughout this process. Otherwise, if you exude too much energy, it could put you in the position where we would have to transfer, which is like definitely not on the agenda, not what we were aiming for. So I could tell at that point you were already, putting out enough energy. Plus, the food you were eating is not staying down. That's energy. So it was more like making sure you were hydrated and making sure when you could rest, you could rest. And it was like a pivotal decision at that point, because I could tell it was like necessary. Otherwise, if this is going to continue, because again, we didn't know what day, right? So it's like, well, we need to conserve as much energy. What if this is 2 more days? What if this is 3 more days? What if this is 5 more days? And if you keep doing all these activities and things, it could just exhaust you. And now we're in a position we don't want to be in. So I was like, go to bed.
Yeah.
That's the thing to do right now.
And so we both go to bed.
Time to rest.
We both go to sleep. And this is like 9 a.m. and we both go to sleep for about an hour. And I'm still like on a recline. And I'm actually able to doze off in and out of my sensations. And I wake up and I suddenly just turn to the left. And I'm like, oh boy, this is a whole nother level of contractions and intensity. And so I get up and I try to go poop, but I notice that I'm spotting. And so I call Yolanda and I'm on the toilet and she tells me that spotting is completely normal. Everything is fine. And I ask her, how long is this going to last? All of this that I'm going through. And she said, oh, maybe 2 days, maybe 2 hours. And I was like, okay. If all the stories I've heard, if they can do it, I can do it. If they can do it, I can do it. And there was a point where I said I couldn't do it.
Yeah, but I went back to what?
What?
You can do it. Because your mind, the psychological part of the brain started kicking in. And it was like, no matter what we've done in life, there's always going to be that point when it's something like this, where it's very enduring.
It wasn't like, I can't do it, I want to go somewhere else. It was just like, I can't do it.
It's like, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, the intensity. And so.
But again, that goes back to being the rock. The rock of reassurance, the rock of you're not by yourself.
Squeezing your hand when I was on the couch as well, like so hard, right?
Yeah, the rock that I'm here. Like, it's okay, go through what you're going through. Like, you're not on your own, you're not by yourself, you can do this. And that's where you got to. You got back on track with like, no, like,
Yeah.
I can do it.
And so
then that goes back to your call that
Yeah.
you had with Yolanda, which I think was also a little bit more of reassurance as well, because when that spotting came up, it was like, oh, was this like part of the process or not?
Well, I knew it was. It was just like, what does this mean? Does that mean my baby's coming? Like, I wanted to know where I was in the process.
I had no idea what it meant, so
Yeah.
maybe it gave me a little bit of reassurance
Yeah.
too. I was just like, okay, cool, this is normal. Sure.
Yeah. So then you said something shifted when I left the bathroom off the toilet. No poo came out, by the way.
Well, that's when you went back to the bed, right?
I went to kneel.
Yeah. And you
So
were kneeling on the edge of the bed.
yeah, I was kneeling on the edge of the bed with my knees on the mats on the floor. And these intense, I mean, I think you can call this as transition. And I just had involuntary, my body was just pushing. You know, we had baby wipes ready, and I kept asking Cody, is poop coming out? And you're like, no, no, no. And I don't know how long do you think that was lasting?
Time is a big mystery.
Yeah.
No,
Time is
I
just like,
there was multiple waves. It was like,
but I started screaming.
wave. Yeah, that was the max. That
Yeah.
was as intense.
Have you ever heard me scream like that?
No, but
Nope.
I've screamed like that on Bufo.
Okay.
So it was very similar in the sense of like, whatever's happening, it's happening.
Yeah, and
you know?
so it was, I've never screamed that intense. And at that time when my body was pushing, I was holding on a little bit, and almost to the point, like, you know, like if you're like about to get punched in the gut, you kind of brace, you kind of hold on a little. And I was doing that. But during that time, there came a point where I was like, just like, let go. And I think I did that.
You were letting go, absolutely, because I was watching, and whatever was happening, and you were going with it.
Yeah.
And I was also becoming distracting, because as you were exuding that kind of energy, it got more hot.
Yeah, we were
upstairs. More hot upstairs.
The burning stove was on. Or
this goes back to the noise thing.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you're going through these waves, you're like in the zone, and I could tell it's very important to be in a space where there's no distraction.
I waited until he closed the window.
Because we're not we're in a rural area, but we're not in the middle of nowhere where there's nobody. And like you're hearing, you know, some pretty loud sounds coming out of you, right? So it's like I needed to open the door to let the heat out, but then you were aware of it. I was also aware.
I was very hyper aware of my surroundings and everything.
So when the waves would come on, I'd shut the window again.
But that was distracting.
It was distracting, but it's like, what do you want your husband to pass out? Because he's gonna die from the heat.
But knowing that, right? Hot. We would have to create an environment where there's no interruptions. Me waiting. Okay, so then
I had to do it the best I could.
And that was fine, worked out.
And it wasn't easy,
it worked out.
A decision, a call I had to make.
But I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I even, you know, it was just crazy that how I was roaring and screaming. I've never done it that way. And it would happen, you know, 3 bouts of these involuntary pushes of my body pushing, and the screams coming with it. Then I would get a little rest. Like a quick rest, and then it would come again. And this was, I don't know, it took at least 10 rounds of these 3 bouts. And so, you know, in my mind, I was like, do I have this many, you know, like purge, like,
which goes back to the energy factor
coming out of me. And so I'm like, I need to break the cycle of this happening. So I feel like so weak to even try to get up, but I muster up the energy to half kneel, to get up, thinking it's all going to stop. Like wanting it to stop, right? By changing positions. And then now you're standing, Cody, and now I'm like leaning onto you, and I think I'm on your left ear, and it continues. I'm screaming, and I just naturally want to feel myself down there, and I'm like, is this the head?
Well, that was a big change.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you were on the ground, when I look back at it, when you were kneeling, your hips were closed, your knees were like pretty much together, and you were going through contractions, things weren't changing. It was like intense. And then I think that shift happened when you did get up, right? Because it broke that cycle for a little bit. But now I also noticed your feet were very wide. Your thighs were very wide. Everything else shifted, like from the perspective of your hips. Like they were wide open, even though you were, you know, hanging on to me, which was fine. But that wasn't happening when you were in the kneeling position.
And so I feel the head, and I tell you to look down. And what's going on through your mind at that moment? You look
Well,
down.
I saw our son. I didn't know it was our son at the time. But I saw the crowning. I saw what was crazy to me is when I saw his head, like I knew there was like the coning. I knew the skull is pliable for this to be possible. I knew that, but I didn't know to the degree in which that could actually happen. And my first reaction when I saw his head crowning was, holy cow, it looks like a pyramid. Like it was so pointy. And I was like, there's no way that a skull could compress that much without like doing something to the brain. So my initial thought and feeling was like, uh-oh, what if there is a deformity? Like maybe his brain and his head and his skull are deformed. And all I could go back to was like, that's not necessarily true. This does look like, and this is the first baby head I've ever seen, crowning, let's say. And I just went back to, no, that's probably just the skull crowning, the head crowning. But it was so extreme. My first gut feeling was like, oh my God. But I also wasn't going to say anything because I'm not going to put negativity out there or worry or fear of something wrong, being at play. Because like on top of that feeling, there was a knowing of like, no, this is exactly what it should look like. This is exactly how it works.
Were you were crying right when I was still kneeling on the bed, weren't you crying?
I was probably crying off and on throughout this
Because
whole process. Once we got upstairs and it got to that level, like, I mean, something was happening to me
what was going
that
on
I
in your
wasn't,
head?
controlling or making a decision. It was involuntary.
What was it like to see me like that?
Gratitude, love, the deepest gratitude you could ever experience on, outside of experiencing that with a child once the child's born, a connection, a trust in God, leaning into the process, leaning into each other, just being as supportive as possible. Really, it was a lot. But yeah, underneath everything was just like gratitude and love. That's all I can remember as far as how it felt and the kinds of thoughts that were coming up. It's a magical experience. And as it was transpiring, I'm like, wow, this is like everything was making sense as far as like this is all going as one would think based on what we've learned through the beginning phase of getting to the point of birth.
Yeah. And so yeah, you see the head and you're like, yeah, that's the head. And I'm like, oh my God, like we're almost at this finish line.
But also you stepped out wider at that point, I believe, as well.
I said, I can't squat.
Well, I think we were gonna try to squat or something, and I was holding you.
Yeah,
I remember, and you're just like, I'm too tired, I can't do that, or something along those lines. It's vaguely in my memory, but I remember I think we did try to do something, and it was just not happening.
Yeah.
And then it was just like clear, no, you're gonna stay standing.
Yeah.
But let's just, brace for this.
Yeah, you held me.
And then I think I went down to, I was able to hold you up with my right arm, and then I went down to one knee because I wanted to be able to watch what was happening.
In case the baby just came out.
I didn't want the baby to land on the floor.
And
I'm sure it would be fine. I just didn't want to see that happen.
Yeah, we had padding. During that, when I know the baby's head is out, well, you said it was retreating and coming out by a lot, but it didn't go all the way in, right?
No, you had your waves, and like his head would poke through more, right, when the contraction was happening, and then that in between phase, the head would kind of come back in a little bit, but you could still see the peak of his skull.
Wow, fascinating.
So and kind of go out, and out and in, and I think it only happened a couple of times.
Yeah,
and then it was
because what was going on through my head, I was like, I don't feel, where is that urge to push? I don't feel an urge to push. However, I wanted to meet my baby, and so I tell myself, there's no rush to do anything at this moment. So I kind of like try to relax a little bit, just breathe, and then I decide to do a push, and then I feel the ring of fire, and from the stories I've heard, to push to the ring of fire, so I push, and then
so the head was out after you pushed, and it was like, oh wow, like this is amazing, this is so cool. And then on the push, when he did fully come out, the water came out, or the amniotic fluid came out, and then just like boom, he just popped out, and he landed in my left hand, and I could see the umbilical cord was there, and kind of like a football, just brought the football up and placed him in your arms on your chest right away.
But I was standing. When did I kneel down?
I think you eventually sat down.
Yeah.
So I handed him to you. You held him. I'm probably crying at that point, just in awe, bliss, amazed, oxytocin to the max, and just watching you look at him,
Yeah.
hold him, caress him.
Yeah, I'm very much there as well.
And he also started making noise, I believe, right away too.
Yeah. And we have footage, I think 4 minutes later, of him being born, which you could find on my Instagram, Emily Cebu.
Yeah. And I wished I had recorded the whole thing. And there was a moment in which we could have decided upon that, but then I just didn't want to do anything outside of what we were going through.
Yeah.
Like
we were already in the moment. And we just thought it was going to go on.
Yeah. Were we going to film for 2 weeks or a week or 5 days?
Yeah.
So we didn't get to capture everything on video.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just so beautiful. Everything unfolded the way it unfolded, and
it couldn't have gone more perfectly.
Yeah, he latched an hour later. From what I learned, you don't wipe the baby clean, no hat, just skin to skin immediately. Keep the baby. I mean, upstairs was really warm because heat rises in our house. Well, anywhere, but it was really warm anyways, and we just had the baby around, the towel around me and the baby, went into bed. So you tell me it's been 30 minutes and I'm feeling a little bit of cramping. I'm in bed already, and I'm like, yeah, like I'm ready to birth my placenta. Let's do this. I have this on footage as well. Cody has the GoPro, but he gets me the baby Bjorn insert potty. I'm tall kneeling on the bed, and he puts it in between my legs. I'm holding Bjorn on my chest, and yeah, I bear down a little bit and it plops right out.
Didn't you do like a cough too?
I did a cough because that's what I learned. But like, I didn't even need to cough because I just knew to like
push.
Yeah, and so it comes right out. And yeah, and then he latches. Another a half hour later, it's just the most beautiful thing. Like, we were high for like days, and
had so much energy.
Yeah,
didn't need to sleep. Could just do a million things.
It was just so fun. And we found out, he was a boy when he was born, and we already had a name picked out for a boy and for a girl. And we only had one name for a boy, which was Bjorn.
Yep.
Which can mean what?
Bear.
Yeah, which means bear. And powerful and gentle.
Yeah, well, if you think of a bear, right? What is a bear? To me, it represents both sides of the coin. Gentle as a bear, but also a bear can be very dangerous.
What were your thoughts? I mean, do you remember? How'd you feel?
Blissed out.
Yeah.
Oxytocined out. Tons of energy. Lots of love in the air. Just fully connected, and back to gratitude. It's just so grateful that we had the experience that we had. Like, the support that you had was very helpful for me because I knew you were connected to other women. Like, it's something I think women should have. It shouldn't just maybe be, husband and wife, because there's certain things that you were able to connect on that a husband definitely can't. So just gratitude for everything from day one throughout the entire process, and it just brought us together that much more. But we did what we needed to do in order to have what we had.
I decided I wanted to do a lotus birth, and I felt like that was just the most gentle way for my baby to be born and separated from his lifeline, by just letting it, take its time to
make sure he got everything he got out of the placenta.
That was very important, getting all of his stem cells and blood and iron through the cord.
And it was also because he was still connected. Like, when a baby has a placenta, like, you can't just get up and go and do stuff. So the placenta was also like a rock. It was very grounding. It's something that kept you where you were at, and I was able to do what you needed outside of that, so you could sit still and be there and be present. And I think it's an interesting aspect that I didn't consider when doing a lotus birth. And that was a cool experience, which led us into another decision, which was like, as the days went on, we had the salt, right? We had the bucket, we had the herbs from your friend, we had the little placenta carrying thing.
Yeah. It's really amazing at how, well, how the umbilical cord is so beautiful. It's like a candy cane. And then it stops pulsating and gets cold pretty quick, maybe
Gets
15
cold,
minutes, 30 minutes.
and then
Yeah,
it dried
very
up
limp. Yeah, it dries
pretty quick,
so fast. And
it started to turn into like what looks like rawhide.
yeah,
Right? It looks like very, very firm
Yeah.
rawhide. Like there's no other way to
no,
describe
it's
that.
so strong. And if you're interested in how to do a lotus birth, I made an awesome PDF that
Great resource.
I'll put a link below for it. And yeah, it's a whole guide to lotus birth and our experience with it as well. But it was
the decision I wanted to get to that I don't want to forget was like, as the days went on, we were doing, fun things, even like resalting was fun, examining the placenta was
really
fun.
cool.
We did a little art project with the placenta because we were
We had a
maybe
placenta print.
gonna do like a friend of ours built a box, which was a burning box for the
A cord
umbilical
burning box,
cord.
which I did have in case the lotus birth didn't work out, or if it was too cold for Bjorn, for it to be on his belly, the cold cord.
So that was
it was an option as well to burn the cord.
But we were able to have him be as connected to the cord and the placenta as long as possible. But then as we were doing different things and
day 4
laying there, it was like
day 4, it was hanging by a thread, and
like
I think
you still have to move, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't just stay still.
It was so hard, and it was day 4. It was so close to falling off, and like we actually decided to cut it off because he was tugging it on accident.
Well, this is a thing we didn't necessarily know about either, which was the cord was over his belly, and it went into the pouch, right?
Yeah.
But what I think you could do, and this maybe makes a little more sense, is if the cord actually went between the thighs of the baby,
because he wouldn't be able to grab it.
Yeah, because that was the thing that was happening, is like he would either grab it and it was starting to unpeel, but then he would cry, which was indicating like it's tugging and coming off, which is good.
It's like a scab hanging.
But it was also kind of ripping and causing probably a little pain.
Yeah.
So we were like, well, we could get what we want, which is for the umbilical cord just to fall off when it falls off, which would be great. And that was the idea. But like, it's also causing our baby pain, it looks like. So we're like, well, let's probably cut this before.
We have footage of that too. So we asked
him.
I
tried scissors.
Yeah, we tried scissors. So strong that scissors doesn't even work. You got to go get your wire cutters.
Yeah, wire cutters.
And we cut it, and then we left a little nub. And I think the next day he rolled onto his belly somehow, and it fell off. And it was just really a beautiful experience. And I would actually do a lotus birth again. I'm also open to the ceremonious ritual of cord burning as well, for Bjorn to do it for the sibling.
Like if it doesn't fit with your lifestyle, if you have multiple kids, say, and there's things you do need to do, so that's fine too.
That might be cool as well. But it was just a beautiful thing to experience. And now, my placenta has shrunken. It got salted and dehydrated pretty much.
Saved it.
It's in a bag now for Bjorn to see, and he can do whatever he wants with it, whether it's bury it, whether it's let it float down the river or throw it in the ocean. Who knows what he wants to do with it. But I think it would be really cool for him to see it when he's older.
Yeah, we didn't put it in a blender and eat it.
No.
But we do also have a piece of art which came of it, which is pretty cool.
You can also check in
because you could do like a tree of life stamp, but our paper wasn't like
absorbent.
Yeah, so we don't really have that. Plus, we didn't think about it, till more days passed and there was less blood. But that's a cool little project. It's really a nice memory.
The birth was beautiful, and it's amazing to. 7 months later, but from where we started to now, birth is a rite of passage for women. And I feel that much more powerful, that much more attuned to a human being that we created. I just feel stronger and more confident in my abilities. I feel that the way our culture views birth is a disservice to women, which then impacts our children, which then impacts the world. If women aren't given the opportunity to express our power, this power to give birth, what we're made to do,
you get robbed.
Yeah, we get robbed of the experience,
the growth,
and our abilities on who we are as women and as mothers. And I feel like the impact of that, of having, a hospital birth or a home birth with medical midwives, medical interventions, it's
can
a
be very
whole.
harmful in many ways, whether psychological, physical, spiritual.
I wanted to maximize and have an optimal birth and even postpartum. And I feel like interventions, like any chance that my baby would not latch, whether being drugged up from an epidural, like why risk that possibility when I can have an almost guaranteed, easeful breastfeeding, easeful connection, happy baby, a content baby, because he came into this world so peaceful and so gentle. His first feeling to his skin wasn't a rubber glove. It was his father's hand, skin to skin. His vernix, the white stuff, the fluids, the blood, he wasn't wiped vigorously with these stinky, sterile hospital towels.
And you weren't poked and prodded.
Yeah, and there was no bright lights. His first view wasn't bright lights, unnatural LED fluorescent lights. It was just our natural light, this from the sun coming into our bedroom. And
was no masks and goggles and foreign people and strangers. And none of that. Like if you got an emergency, then go do what you got to do for an emergency. But a birth is not an emergency.
Contraction sensations, they're intense. But as women, we can handle it. It's not any more than, to me, a really bad, intense stomach ache. However, the actual birth, of his emergence was not painful.
Again, women, your body did what your body's designed to do.
Women during birth produce norepinephrine, beta endorphins, natural painkillers, where that doesn't hurt. Because if you didn't have any of that and your vagina was stretching, of course it that could hurt, but it's just a natural process of you slowly stretching out.
Your body does what it needs to do,
as long as you give it time.
It needs to do it.
And I feel like being in a setting, where you're with medical providers, you're going to be on a time constraint, and you're going to feel this pressure to get the baby out. And why disturb something that can unfold beautifully and naturally? That's what I value, and I want to do it again. Birth is made so women want to do it again.
It was all worth it, Bjorn. Look at you. What is this?
We love you, buddy. We love you.
We love you.
And I'm so excited for the next the next time. And I'm so happy, and I'm so grateful that I have a life partner, a husband that's on the same page, and we're in alignment with how we live.
Hopefully your story and our story and the story that we've shared can help others in the way that the stories we were able to hear helped us and impacted us for the better. It led us in a direction we didn't know much about, and it opened our eyes, and it led us down a path that we're truly grateful we went down, and will continue to go down with any other children that we decide to bring into the world and that want to come into the world and be in our lives, right? So there's more going on than just us, but that's the hope. The hope is that this story and connecting husband and wife, as we shared it today, can do what's been done for us.
And I'm going to make a whole nother video on our birth certificate process.
Oh, Lord.
Because there was no prenatal exam or baby well exam after he was born exam, and how we are in the process of obtaining a birth certificate, because I want to travel with Bjorn and get a passport and all that stuff. So
there's a way to go about it, and there's a way to go about it that can be very difficult and doesn't maybe need to be.
So that's a problem. That's something that we would want you to avoid. If you have any questions, if your partner or husband has any questions for Cody on a man-to-man level,
just reach out to Emily.
leave them in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.